Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to yet another edition of the Lambom Show. Today is Monday, October 25th, 2021. I'm happy we are able to come back to our regular schedule. We continue our series on African immigrant men and relationships. And I like to maybe do, I don't know whether it's a disclaimer or whatever you take this, but I really want to say that over the last 10 months, we focused on men because BK and I are men, and our aim was not to pretend to claim that we are some perfect men here whose relationships are the best in the world, and we are here to give out lessons for men who don't know anything. Our aim on this show was not to bash men, to discredit men and say that they are all the things they are doing. No, we're simply highlighting from a man's perspective things that we find are not going on correct in relationships, where we ourselves, with some experience, some readings that we have done, we are able to point out, suggested paths that could help in improving on our relationships. So I know many people have accused us of, taking it on men regularly. That has never been our aim. That was not part of why we started this show. And we want to put that disclaimer out. Nothing here is meant to discredit, to bash men, to give the impression that men do not know how to relate. We are here to celebrate. We are here to contribute towards relationships. Last week, we talked about narcissism, narcissistic tendencies, and how they become toxins in relations, how they are lethal, they kill relationships. And one of the things that BK highlighted at last week's session was the fact that we must let people who are narcissistic hold them up to certain standards, hold them up to a certain reputation. In a way, you really never engage them directly, because then you get to a fight that is interminable. Today, we want to shift it one notch up, because at last week's conversation, a participant, an audience member, suggested that since we have been talking a lot about needs, let us focus on these needs. What are the needs people have in relationships? We all come into relationships expecting things. What are these needs? And generally, and I found that to be quite interesting, quite true, that we don't pay attention to the needs of our relationships. We come in life, you are looking forward to a relationship. We all dream about the partners, isn't it? The right man, the right woman. And when we get the man or the woman, it's as if that relationship need has been met. And we forget that with this relationship, now we are in the relationship, we now have to pay attention to the needs, each other's needs. And today we want to look at those needs. And I'm suggesting that we look at what psychologists have classified as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? We'll look at that. And I said, maybe couples need to take a course in Maslow's hierarchy of needs so that we are able to work through some of the problems that we have. If we identify these things, maybe we will not have lots of the problems that we are having. And I'm very glad that Dr. Lukong was here last week for the first time. He was participating last week in the audience, and today he has joined us and is a member on our Monday show. And I want to welcome Dr. Lukong. I want to welcome BK. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Lukong, welcome.
Thank you very much, Lambert.
Any word for us?
I think for me, it's a it's a great honor to be on the show today. I think to share the stage with you and BK. I've watched your show a couple of times, and I think to share the stage with you, it is, for me, I just say I feel honored to be with you today. So thank you very much for the honor.
Thank you very much. BK, Here we are again. Welcome back.
Thank you for so much. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I would like to say what I love the most. I'm not going to talk about me, I'll talk about Edwin. What I love the most about this guy is his modesty. The smile you see on his face never disappears. It doesn't matter if the world is coming to an end. And that is the kind of, he is the kind of person you want to have in your tribe. Now, I'm not advertising him. He's married, he's taken, so he's unavailable. But he is definitely the sort of person you want in your tribe. He is all about positive vibes. He's all about growth, empowerment, and development. And I have never seen anyone who comes as close, if not who epitomizes the word selflessness. And that is what I look for in my friends. So you can imagine when I said I wanted Adrian to be a part of this show, it was not for me. It's just for what his presence, whether he speaks or he does not speak, what that presence would add in the currency of value. It's exactly what we're looking for. So, Edwin, it's an honor to have you here. And Lambert, you know what I always say, there are only two things in life,
Mhm.
there are only two lanes. There's that lane on which things are going right, in which case we celebrate. And there's the lane on which we are putting things right, which we anticipate celebrating. So we're either celebrating or we're anticipating celebrating, and that's what life is really all about. So thank you.
Yes, so again, I think for the most part, celebrations are always there. That anticipation is what many people don't pay attention to. But that is not true because there's no life without hope, isn't it? If we don't hope, we don't look forward to things, there'll be no reason for people to live. That is why people commit suicide, in fact. And so I agree. Yes, there are only two lanes, but let's get to it. When you and I started this show, we found a need to address a certain, call it pathology within our communities. And it was a pathology where we found out that, I mean, if you click on social media, there are too many people who are talking about relationships from the woman's perspective. It's always going to be women talking about this health, all that. But there are not too many people who are focused on relationships from the man's perspective. And we wanted to contribute something towards that. And we have had a series of things, and I know again the energy. I love it so much because every time we start off, we say, "How is the energy?" And from the energy, I learned it. We are all energy looking to build synergy, isn't it, Dr. Luco? The energy
Absolutely.
that you bring is going to enable us to build synergy. The problem is that energy comes with a lot of responsibilities that we often take for granted or do not pay attention to, and that is where that friction starts coming in. Because like I teased out in my intro, there are needs that we have. We want to get into a relationship, we get into the relationship and we think that we have arrived, and forgetting to know that it is the beginning of another journey. It is that thing about the horizon, isn't it? You climb up one mountain and you discover that there are many more mountains there. You are stuck, isn't it, in a sense? Are you going to go forward or are you going to come down? And so how do we deal with this? How do we deal with these needs? What are these needs, in fact? Are we even aware, and how did this play out in our lives in such a way that we can take care of them? That's like 2,000 questions in one. You can see I'm a bad interviewer. But hey,
So let's start with the Almighty God. You see, this deity we call God, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. This deity, he is this deity is amazing. I'm careful about using the word he because I don't want to polarize the conversation. I don't want to turn it into some male and female thing. So I would just stick to deity. This deity is amazing. We come into the world and we think for every construct, for every invention, every appliance in your house, there is a manual. Why is it that we come into the world and there is absolutely no manual. There is no frame of reference, no place we can go to try and understand how we work, who we are, how we operate, how we function. But you would notice that God has actually laced this so called manual in the fabric of these needs, which we talk about. These are the things we have identified as, I call it the map of the territory. I call it our bearings. And ultimately, the way I look at it, I see it as God's manual, the manual that God has given to us. I'll explain what I mean by all of this. What is the very first confusion? Firstly, we'll talk about the needs, but let's look at some of the confusions. We live in a world which is fraught with insecurity, and so we're always looking to get. We're always coming from a place of insecurity. We're always looking to grab. The things that we see others have and we appreciate, we want for ourselves. And that is the very first problem. We don't want to start the conversation with problems, but it's always good to highlight some of the pitfalls that we all face, especially when we engage and embrace relationships. So you would notice that because we live in a world which is fraught with lack, a world where we're all trying to survive. In every engagement, in any situation, we're looking for what we can get. And I call these our wants. Now, the irony is sometimes we confuse our wants for our needs and vice versa. And that usually is the beginning of that recipe for disaster. There are certain things which are wants, they are nice to have. There are things which are needs, we must have them. So I'll give you a practical example. If you go to a village somewhere and you see a kid and you ask them, if you had money, we don't even need to go to the village. Even if you're dealing with adults, ask someone, if you had 100,000 francs, you're talking to someone who hasn't got a dime, who hasn't got a cent, who can make claim to a penny. And you ask them, if you had 100,000 francs CFA, what would you do with it? Chances are this person will tell you how responsibly they would spend it. But then, so they would talk about buying books for their kids. They would probably talk about paying water and electricity bills. They'll probably talk about buying food for their family. But the moment you put that money in their hands, they go shopping for the latest Pierre Cardin or Hugo Boss, or they go drinking. So this is what I mean when I say sometimes our needs and our wants conflict, and when we confuse one for the other, it becomes we go down a perilous path. At the end of this session, I will explain what I mean when I say God is amazing, because God has put within us these needs which must be met. And when we meet these needs in positive ways, we realize that we get closer to God. We become more and more one with God. That omnipresence, that potential, we call it fulfillment. We get into a place of fulfillment. We come to a place eventually where we reach out to serve a purpose that is bigger than the self. But we will come to this at the end. How it all plays up, how it all comes together. I guess now would be a good time to actually talk about the needs and what they are. But before we start, if there's anything you or Edwin would want to say to chime in, that would be great. Any questions you would want to ask so we could talk around, give put perspective, and bring more meaning and grounding to the conversation.
I wanted to get Dr. Edwin to comment on the fact of the distinction with needs and wants, because I very often I think that is artificial, isn't it? Are there no moments when what we actually consider a want could become a need? Are those like hard and fast rules when it comes to that?
I think for me, the issue of needs, especially when it comes to relationship, I think the thing is that me, I look at it and I feel more of I think our education and our the world in which we live in, it has more of make life very difficult for us. And when I say make life very difficult for us, it is more of we tend to analyze things too much. We tend to look at things, and the way I'm looking at it is more of if we go back. I don't even want to say go back to our grandparents. I say if we go back to our parents, you know, our parents, they were humans. They were not aliens, or they were not they were human being like us, and they never analyze on not fulfilling my needs in this relationship. And if we look at our grandparents whom for them marriage was more of something where people were being introduced to each other. Let's forget now where I look for the one that I like, or I look for the one that I love. With our grandparents, they introduce somebody and the people, and they live together, and they never have the problems that we have today. Why? Because you know what, you have somebody, and you knew that, of course, this is the person I love, this is the person I'm in relationship with, this is what is expected of me. They didn't more of analyze, whether it is which hierarchy of today, whether is she fulfilling my psychological needs, my financial needs, my emotional needs. No, they just wanted to be human. And when you want to be human, you don't make things too much. And even if we look at the English definition of a relationship, if we look at the male and female relationship, we talk about falling in love. And when you fall in love, it's you who fall in love. You don't fall in love with your needs that somebody has to fulfill before that love is going to be. And I feel that it is our education that is making life more difficult for us, and in making our demands more difficult. In the way that now when you are going to a relationship, you go with a catalog of what the things that you expect somebody whom you love to fulfill. And for me, I think that for me is the most difficult thing. That is a difficulty in which we have because of those high expectations. Somebody who thinks about the needs before you go into a relationship, that's the person who's going with a package. To the extent now that when people are going to a relationship, they make a contract before marriage. That okay, if these needs were not fulfilled, okay, the marriage finish. And I think it is just those we are too analytical in the relationship. We are becoming like robots. And I just feel that when you meet the right person, the needs they go by the day. You wake up and you love and you leave. That's the way I look at
So
it.
I think that's a that's a great point in terms of we seem to have lost our humanity, isn't it? We seem to
Absolutely.
have we have depersonalized relationships so much that we focus on things that do not bring out the humanity. And I agree with that to a certain extent, but I also will push back in terms
Yeah.
of the fact that there I mean our grandparents also went into relationships expecting, isn't it? They were introduced, but they had to bring palm oil, they had to bring beef, they had to bring things for that introduction to come to fruition. So it's not as if they just came and introduced and then the whole thing was. Because again, traditional marriage as it stands today is a legacy of our grandparents having ordained that for that introduction to take place, these are the things that need to be in place. So even right there, you find that there are some There's some basic conditions that need to be met. But I mean, BK, what do you comment? What's your comment on what Doc just said?
So what Edwin says is it's very it's very granular in the sense that we're looking at this scenario like he said. We're going back to basics. I love what he said about falling in love. You see, when you fall in love with someone, what is your focus? What's your primary focus? Your primary focus is what you are bringing to the table. Your primary focus is going out there to create an environment that is conducive for that person's growth.
Absolutely.
You lay yourself out on the carpet and you ask them to walk all over you. You run around holding the door open for them. You don't want to see them under stress. You don't want to see them stressed. You don't want to see them in a state of duress. You don't want to see them in distress. So that is what love is. You don't see anything wrong with and or about that person. That is what I took from what Edwin said, and that's what I believe he was trying to capture when he went back to the olden days. People were satisfied with the basics. It took very little to find contentment in a relationship. It was not about the latest car. It was not about the size of the house. It was not about the size of your bank account. It was just about the connection between two people and the fact that they could fulfill each other and grow as a unit. So it really epitomized and captured the whole essence of two people becoming one. And that was the beauty of it. Of course, what you said is very important because you see, there were people who then plugged themselves around that whole marriage construct, that enterprise. As you would see in any situation, you would have people who want to benefit from a situation. And that is how the virus slowly crept into what was once upon a time beautiful and perfect. Because the needs were not that many, they were not far, and they were few. They were few and far between. As we know, there were just about 6 of them. But today, you have the latest technology, you have got the latest fad, you've got the latest t-shirt, the latest sneakers, the latest iPhone, and you have people who follow the trends. So now it's about the trends, it's not even about the needs. And that is where we need to make a distinction between needs and wants, because the world has gotten so complex. It's gotten so convoluted. We don't know what is good for us anymore. Of course, we go through life, we're looking for things that can serve us, things that will will give us pleasure, and we want to avoid pain. But the problem is in the definition of what it is we call pleasure and pain. There is short-term pain and long-term gain, and short-term gain and long-term pain. If we get that definition wrong, we tend to prioritize the wrong things. And that is why, again, as Edwin says, and he is correct, we have to get analytical. Why do we need to get analytical, Edwin? It is because of this confusion. So we want to break things down to the basics so people can understand the things that they are looking for. I'm sure you would both agree with me that even if I get into a relationship and I want my needs met, the truth is I need to understand who I am in order to know what it is that I want. How many people truly know themselves to even know what it is that they want? And this is where the human needs actually puts things in context. That's what I'd like to say for now. Back to you.
No, so BK, I want to hold you back onto what you just said. I think the issue is about prioritization, isn't it? What is it we prioritize? And so it seems as if we have our modern world seems to have gone out to prioritize the wrong things, and because of that, and that's I guess Edwin's point. We have prioritized the wrong things, and because we have prioritized the wrong things, that is why we have this constant bombardment where the energy is just wrong, it's just off, isn't it? We are now rubbing against each other because the priorities are wrong. And what we are trying to put out here is, but what are these priorities? What are they? Who even defines these priorities? Because again, that's part of what the
Absolutely.
doctor's point
Absolutely.
was. Who even defines these priorities? And if I come with a long catalog, I I don't have a problem with coming with a catalog, but let's put the catalogs on the table so that all of us understand that, hey, this is my catalog and this is your catalog. do I want to use, do we want to use both catalogs at the same time? Because I think part of the issue we addressed here was there are people who come in with expectations, but they do not tell the other partner that these are their expectations. They have it in their head and they expect the other person to magically discern, decipher what these expectations are. And when these are not being met, then you find everything falling apart. So again, I don't know who wants to go, but Doc, go.
And I think what initially I remember what you said earlier, which was more about this mountain, which you finish one and you see another one, and it goes to what BK just said about about the modern world, because when you come with a package and when you come now and you are more of when you the what BK said about we not even knowing what we are looking for. Because when you don't know what you're looking for, you wake up the next day, you see something new, which you want, or today you thought, oh, it was a laptop, you wake up tomorrow, you see you thought it was a desktop, you wake up tomorrow, you see the laptop, it becomes a new need, and then after the laptop, you said, oh, I've seen the iPhone, it becomes a new need. And the problem, I think one of the biggest problem, like BK said, it is a question of, how many of us even know ourselves? How many of us really know what we need? Because what we want, we can want them. You talk about what we need and what we want. And I see need as the things that we need for survival, and want as the things that we want. Sometimes our wants are not really defined by us. Which are things that you wake up tomorrow, this one is available, you suddenly think that you want it. And you want it because of advertisement. And you want it because, not because you need it, but because you want to show off. So it is the question of, the first thing is, first you have to know, if you don't know yourself, how do you even know what you need? You wouldn't know you wouldn't know what you need. And I think BK hit the nail with that. And I think that is one of the biggest things that we struggle with today, And that is why I said before, when we are now calling some of those new things that are coming today, some of the new technologies, we are calling them human need. And I'm saying, if we go back, our grandparents, they didn't have them. They were still human beings, So they were not lesser human beings because they didn't have that, which we now think they are need. No, they are just wants that we think that we need them. And if you go into a relationship, and like we said earlier, it is about, you look at somebody, you fall in love with the person fall in love with you. It becomes more of the first important thing is, what, even just for me, even just waking up and just having a hug, sometimes you don't even, sometimes they say that the best conversation is the one that you say no words, and that is, those are some of the things that makes us human, but then when they are like, communication, you have to tell the person what you did, but sometimes the best communication is you just say nothing, and just saying nothing, you feel the person. And we have taken our mind and our head and our everything, and it has been outside, and we need to come back into us. And when you are in your own presence, then you can feel another person's presence. And when you feel another person's presence, you don't need to be telling them what you need. You will feel it. And the problem is because we are out there, we are not even in here. And to be in, to feel another person, you need to be in here.
I think that's a very great point, in terms of, we don't even know ourselves, so we are not even present to ourselves. We talk about these things, you are looking at it from the perspective of, my need is determined by some other person. So because the other person has a good house, I too should have a good house. It's not even looking at it from the presence, being present to myself. Who am I? Every time I come to this question of identity, I always use the biblical paradigm where Christ says, who do people say I am? What are they saying? But who do you say I am? And it's the same thing about us. Who do people say you are? But you yourself, Who do you say you are? And so, BK, in this journey of self-discovery, in terms of deciphering our needs and our wants in order to prioritize, in Edwin's terms, in being present to ourselves so that we can now be attentive to ourselves. Because in being attentive to ourselves, where we pay attention to them. What do we need to do? Because the world, again, we know is so noisy. How do we get to that journey? How do we get to that point of self-discovery?
Absolutely. So Edwin has articulated it really well. We asked the question, who are we? I always come back to this whole example, this simple example of breathing. Notice that breathing is the one thing which, if we do not do, we might as well close shop. To stop breathing for half an hour, it's game over. It is so important. It is so fundamental to life. It's something we should be celebrating every single day. Between the three of us, let's be honest to ourselves. When is the last time either of us, any one of us, patted themselves on the back and said, "Oh wow, I breathed today"? We take it for granted. But when we buy that new car, all it does is take us from point A to point B. You could call it a Uber. A Uber would take you from point A to point B. We take pictures of ourselves next to it and we splash it across Facebook, and it becomes the next thing. Then we get these likes, and those likes define us. And this is how we move away further and further from who we are, our identity. We become the things that we have, the people that we know, and the accolades that we have in our back pockets. We go through education. Instead of having education go through us, no, we end up becoming the certificate and the title that came with it. We use the title and the certificate more than we use the knowledge. So we find ourselves in a place where, rather than using the certificates and the empowerment that we have had to make the world a better place, we use these accolades to diminish ourselves and to diminish the world around us. It is part of this loss of identity, because the title is recognized a lot more than what it is you're saying. We see it sometimes in our own communities. So it is not what you are saying, it is who is saying what. That is what gives things value. And so it is it epitomizes this whole identity crisis that we are suffering from, this thing that is eroding who we are from the inside out. And Edwin says, how do we start that journey? See, because we start out looking for who we are out there. And that's where we make a mistake, because the journey should be inward, as Edwin articulated. And that was so beautifully put. If you want to find yourself, start by going in. Introspection. Get to know who you are. When you are stripped of who you know and what you have and all you own, what is left is who you are. So if I stripped you of all these things that you have, that you surround yourself with, and there's nothing left on the inside because you feel empty, then that is your true identity. Nothing. And it's from there you want to start building. If they take your title away, if they take your accolades away, if they take your networks away, which are now defined as your net worth. So we actually have expressions that make a bad situation worse. Your network is your net worth. What happened to who you are and what you bring to the table in spite of your network? You see, because sometimes you have single persons come into the world and they set a ripple that starts a domino effect, and the entire world is changed. We know these people: Gandhi, South African, Nelson Mandela. We know them. They are not few and far between. These are individuals who send out ripples that shake the entire world. Some of them positively, others negatively. Hitler. These are individuals. They did not depend on their networks in order to impact the world. They depended on who they were without their surroundings, in spite of their surroundings. So how do we get back to a place where we understand who we are, find ourselves? Because it's really all about getting to know it, know the self, love the self, be self, and embrace self. When we can do that, then we find the grounding. We find the confidence to go out there and move our own ways. And this brings us right back to the 6 human needs, which we've talked about. So these human needs. Do we want to jump in, or do we want to talk around this again before jumping in?
So I think it's important, just for the sake of maybe tying that up, and seeing, except Doc has something, because it's important.
No, you just tie it
What
up.
what you just said is really key in terms of the who is defined in terms of the what, isn't it?
Yeah.
I am who I am because
Yeah.
of what I have,
Yeah.
the people I know, where
And
I
the
am, and all
degrees.
that, isn't it? So when you strip me of all that, that is the real me. And very often, that is not a me that is comfortable. That is not a me that, I really want to identify with. But that is the me that I should really be paying attention to,
So
because that is the me that needs, that needs help. That's the me that that needs love. That's the me that is really loving and in search of love. But because we have shrouded this me with all these things, I think the journey to self-discovery is peel out all these things. Take out the titles. You see, I've been trying very hard not to call you Dr. Edwin, because I
Just
keep
Edwin.
yes, exactly.
No.
Vicky,
For me, Edwin is so.
exactly. Because
Yeah.
Vicky is, and I think,
Yeah. Of course,
yeah, it's important in one sense, but significantly, the problems we face are because we have failed to identify with our true selves. We are identifying with what others think about us, or what we want others to think about us. And in turn, because of that, put that in the context of a relationship, isn't it? This is somebody who is a boss in an office and wants to go around being called a boss, and cannot believe that he can come home and do some little things at home, which are things that should not be done by the boss, because the person is now being defined in terms of that title. The title now translates everywhere the person goes and becomes a hindrance of being your true self. And you go home, your wife says something, you say, "You're saying that to who? To me? You talk to me like that? Do you know me? You know who I am?" But that is also because the journey, that self-discovery of who we are, of who we are supposed to be, we have not really gone there. So get back to the hierarchy of needs, or the 6 human needs. Now we have talked about that self-discovery. When we discover the self, the true self, these needs should be able to flourish within the true self.
absolutely. So we can actually go front to back or back to front. When we buy a car, or before we buy a car, the first thing is we learn how to drive. And why do we need a car? Because we want to be able to move from point A to point B. When we get to point B, then we can do whatever it is we were doing there to make a difference. Otherwise, that will not happen. So you learn the ropes, you learn how to drive, you read the manual. There's obviously the theoretical part, then there's the practical side of it all. And with time and practice, you come to a place where you understand how to drive that car. Not just how to drive the car, because driving the car is one thing. But then you need to be able to take care of that car. You need to be able to fuel it, oil it, fuel it, oil it. You need to do MOTs every once in a while to ensure that it is in good working condition. Now let's do a reality check. The body is no different. You see, the part of our identity that is the body is no different from the car that we park outside. We need to learn how to take care of this car. We need to learn how to drive it. And as part of learning how to drive it, we need to learn how to take care of it in order for it to stay alive. Because the moment we stop taking care of it, it starts dying. It starts dying. That's not who we are. So the body is not who we are. We're spiritual beings with a physical experience. So when our spirituality translates, it prints out our physicality. As Edwin here will tell you, when we're in survival mode, we are spewing cortisol and adrenaline, and these things are poisonous to the body. They're there to help us survive, deal with a treacherous situation, a volatile situation. And as soon as you come out of there, ideally you want to go back to a place of rest where you're secreting dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and all the feel-good hormones. So as the person who laughs, who smiles more, like Edwin here, you see he doesn't age. It is because he spends his whole life laughing. I don't know what it is. I don't know where he gets that streak from, but that is perfect living. And you would notice he will age by far better than some of us. Those of us who spend our time, all our time in misery, in survival mode. So if you are miserable all the time, all you're saying is you read the wrong manual. You did not realize that the certainty that you need. See, because we all want to be certain that we will be okay. And that's the first human need. We want to be certain. And what is this certainty? What is this certainty all about? We want to be safe, secure, and comfortable. Now picture yourself in the jungle, out in the wild. You have sleazy snakes. It's dark, it's cold, it's windy. And you know that there are snakes and there are tigers and there's this wildlife, and you could be dinner any time of that night. Obviously, you're on edge. Take you away from that environment and put you in a nice, warm, cozy house with a fluffy bed and fluffy pillows. And you would notice that your state changes immediately. So you move from one place where you're trying to survive to another place where you are at peace and at ease. So you feel safe, you feel secure, you feel comfortable. And who wants to leave comfort? Nobody. So we all want to be certain that we're going to be safe, secure, and comfortable. And how does that translate in real life? The safety, security, and comfort is pretty much epitomized by that roof over our heads, 3 square meals a day, and a paycheck by and large to ensure that we can continue this cycle and fulfill it. Now, if we do this continuously, day in, day out, we saw it with the coronavirus lockdown. We have got people suffering from mental health challenges today just because they were in isolation. They were forced to lock down, to be shut down. And so you repeat this routine and there is no change, and it takes such a toll on you. What does that tell you? We need variety. And that is the second need, uncertainty. So the first one is certainty. We want to be sure that we will be safe, secure, and comfortable. People who get into a relationship, that's the very first need. What's your bank account? Do you have a job? Do you own a house? Typically, for most women, for women who want to be taken care of. Again, they fail to realize that it's a mutual thing. So, but then you have people who really honestly believe they're not going to get married. They only get married to someone who will take care of them in every single way. That is a recipe for disaster, because after beyond a certain point, when you lose your spark, you will be used and abused. And this man will start looking out for the next big fad, for the next thing that glows the way you did when they met you. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's a danger. See, because two people are meant to grow. But then we're talking about a second human need, which is uncertainty. So we want variety. When you go out to the movies, what are you looking for? A change of state. Because we all have different states, and nobody wants to be in any one state for way too long. When you go out to the movies, you want a bit of excitement. When you go bungee jumping or mountain climbing or skydiving, we're looking for excitement. So we need that change of state. When we go out and we are trying different things out, hobbies, adventures, and the like, that is that need for excitement, need for variety. The irony is, let's go back to our car. When you start driving that car, at the beginning, you may have an idea what it can do. When you put it on the road and you start testing it and you're pushing it beyond its limits, then you get to understand what that car can really do. And at some point, you upgrade because you need a car that can do better than the one that you had. It's no different with the body. So, like I said before, and this is where God is a genius. See, because we all have to survive. And that is God's way of forcing us to get to understand how that vehicle works. Because that is that vehicle that you will eventually use to complete the process of creation that He started, that this deity started many years, million light years ago. There's no other way you will learn how that vehicle works other than by trial and error, because there's no manual anywhere. You are the manual. A child will eventually walk. You don't have to teach it how to walk. All you need to do is encourage it. With what? Love. We will come to that. And recognition. Lambert, you use that word. We will come to that. These are the needs already coming to the fore, as you can see. So you notice that the manual is written in our hearts, just like I always say, the Bible is written in our hearts. When you do something wrong, conscience kicks in. When you do something right, you feel elated, you feel inspired, you feel motivated. And that is the beauty of it all. So that's variety. And what is variety by and large? Variety is that thing that forces us to go out there and to discover who we are. Our abilities, our capabilities, our strengths, and our weaknesses, our limitations, our triggers, and the like. We get to know the things that we are natural at. We get to know the things that we struggle with. We get to know the things that we abhor. We get to know the things that we just can't stand. And it is from this shopping list, ideally, that we should draft and craft a career. Something that we can do to get people to need us, to recognize us. Something that we can do in order to be significant. And that is the third human need. We want to be recognized. We want to be appreciated. We want to be valued. We want to be significant. So for those who don't have hobbies at all, you notice they have a hard time in life because they have a harder time in life because it is hard for them to really get to know who they are and what they love. See, because if you don't find yourself doing something that you love, ultimately, the thing that you do will kill you because it will drain you. See, because fulfillment comes from doing something that you love. Having that thing that you do be its own reward. Being in a place and headspace where your journey is its own destination. You're not looking to arrive. And when you're operating in that space, the reward is joy. You enjoy fulfillment. It comes from within. It has nothing to do with what's happening around you. Happiness, something happens around you and you feel that extra bout of euphoria. Fulfillment, you're doing what you're doing and it's its own sense of reward and fulfillment, at the end of which you may get a paycheck. So somebody pays you for having fun. That extra bout of euphoria, that is now bliss. Your life is complete. Depression will be something that you read about in the magazines and watch on TV. It will never come close to you. It will never be represented in your life. And so you've discovered yourself, and off the back of getting to know who you are, your abilities, your capabilities, your gifts, and your talents, what happens? You get this job that you love. You're doing this thing that you love. What's the next thing? You want to take care of somebody. You find that next person you can connect with in love. And we're assuming that you are meeting and greeting someone who's on a similar path as you are. They've gone through that same process as well, and they've discovered themselves. They know what they are good at, they know what they're not good at, and you two come together because why? You complement each other. And that is what true love is about. Hand in glove. The right hand and the left hand, they come together for a handshake. Notice that when you look at your right hand and your left hand, they are mirror images of one another. If your hands had been that way, you would not be able to tie a knot. But when it's that way, they look alike, yet they are mirror images, which means they are completely different. And it is the differences that make them strong. It is the differences that make them complement each other. So when two people fall in love, they don't realize that they are falling in love because they complement each other. Now, because of this lack of understanding, when they get together, those differences become problems. They become threats. Now, if the differences that I see in you make me nervous, make me think you're better than me, all it says is I'm insecure. And that insecurity has become a vulnerability. When our insecurity becomes a vulnerability, communication goes out the back door, conflict walks in. See, because we don't talk anymore and we don't address issues because we feel not good enough. We don't want to expose ourselves. So we don't say what it is we're feeling, at least not anymore. We expect the other person to figure it out. Having gone into this whole cycle of meeting someone you really truly love in that relationship, there are three entities. There is you, there's the person you fall in love with, and there's the connection. That connection takes a life of its own and it demands to be fed. It must be taken care of. And it's the responsibility of both parties to come in and do that. So that is the fourth human need, love and connection. You will notice that it's not something that we want. We must have it, which is why you sometimes see a couple, they fight day in, day out, and you're wondering, why don't you just go your separate ways? No, they can't go their separate ways because that need for love, that need for connection is non-negotiable. We want to connect. If you leave someone isolated, they will ultimately die. That's why you have expressions like no man is an island. We all need that connection. Notice that even a narcissist or someone who is psychotic, a psychopath, psychophants, all these people, they need to connect with someone. It doesn't matter whether they are connecting, whether they're in the positive spotlight or they are in the negative spotlight, as long as they are center stage, center of attraction, center of attention, they are good. What is that center of attraction and center of attentionness? Connection. So there may be no love there because these people are vulnerable, but the reason they need this connection is because they want attention. And to them, if they don't feel they are worthy enough, then any kind of attention is good enough. They will sacrifice their love and go for the connection. But what they really need is that love and the connection. Let's go back to significance. Again, see how we lose our way. We follow the next fad, and the advertising industry has understood this so well, which is why it is a $2 billion industry, because they know that they can sell you hogwash, and if they sell it, they package and sell it well enough, you will buy it. And if you buy it, it becomes a trend. And when it becomes a trend, then they have you in the power of their hand, in the palm of their hand. They can wield power and authority over you, and that's how they control you. So they are being significant at your expense, at yours and at my expense. And this is how the world then uses, the world or people who understand these human needs use them to subjugate, to control, and to manipulate you and I, because these are not wants, they are needs. We all want to be significant. So if I make you realize that in order to be someone, you need to be running around with an iPhone 60 from 5, put out an iPhone 60, and you see people get in debt just to own one, so they could hold it and show the world that they too belong with the upper echelons of society. Why? Significance. They want to be significant. And that's the only reason somebody will introduce themselves as, I am this. All the titles before their name, before they say what their name is. And guess what? Where are they? They are in a Njangi house. which means all those titles are completely irrelevant in the context of where they are. But they would insist, they would feel disrespected if you called them without the trail and baggage of titles. And others will take offense with you if you did not recognize their titles. So, this is the extent to which we would go to be significant. Notice that the first four needs we've talked about so far are survival needs, they are physical needs. The next need you would notice is you get to a certain place and you start feeling an urge to make a difference in the world. It's not about the money anymore. We call them philanthropists. Some people hide under the guise of being philanthropists to explore and to exploit. Those are not the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones who truly just want to go out there and make a difference. And we have one right on this podium, Edwin, right here. Most people don't even know he's a medical doctor. You would have to press hard to find out that he's a medical doctor until you hear him speak and hear him address certain subjects, certain topics, and you see the dynamism with which he handles himself and the topics and the way he deals with opposition. Then you start asking yourself questions. But who's this guy? Oh no, he's a doctor. He really is he? I was with him in a community, a traditional community, for what was it? Over 8 years, 9 years. How long has it been now, Edwin? 10 years?
More than 10 years, of
10 years?
course. It's more than 10 years.
More
Of
than
course,
10
it's more
years.
than 10 years.
And I only discovered about 2 years ago. That's when I knew he was a medical doctor. Yet he was operating with medical doctors in the house, contributing because we were delivering all these different projects back home, doing lots of different things. And he was center stage. He was the one pulling all the strings, dynamism out of this world. And I thought it was just some regular Tom or Harry who had taken upon himself to do stuff. This was a title holder, which he could have branded, but no. The whole time I never knew. And that is the kind of respect people like him get from, well, non-entities like myself.
You call
So,
yourself, you call yourself a non-entity. Look at you.
so,
A whole rock.
so that is that, and this is the beauty of it all. See, because you come to that place where it's not about survival. You've transcended your need to survive, and Edwin truly has. He realizes that his survival is a direct function of his ability to elevate the world around him. Because if you take care of your community and you're part of the community, then you are taken care of. That is the need for growth. So notice there's a difference between growing because you want to survive, you need a roof over your head, and growing because you want to make a difference. So growth in this case is growing because you want to up your skills, your abilities, your capabilities, your strengths, so that you can serve a purpose that is bigger than yourself and make a difference and contribute. That's the last human need, contribution. And that is where fulfillment kicks in, because you're actually serving a purpose that is bigger than you, and the fulfillment that you get from that is more than anything could give you in financial terms. So we've gone through the 6 human needs. First being certainty. And how does that manifest? Certainty really is taking us to a place where we feel safe, secure, and comfortable. So our physicality is trying to be like our spirituality, because our spirituality doesn't need to feel safe, secure, and comfortable. It epitomizes safety, security, and comfort. Why? Because it is light and it is love. And we're just trying to get our physicality to a place where it can become one with our spirituality through a medium we call our soul. So these gifts and talents are what usually become the thing, the tool that shape us. Our abilities, capabilities, our sentiments, our emotions. That is the construct of the soul. So it's like the operating system between our spirit, which is light. It gets translated and transformed, and it manifests through our physicality. The things that we do, our abilities and capabilities will translate into our actions, the actions that we take, based, of course, on the difference we look and seek to make. Because ultimately, when we're looking for love, what are we looking for? We're looking for ourselves. We forget that we are love. We go looking for it. And when we find it, we realize that when we give that love away to the person we found, we are the ones who feel fulfilled. So we realize that we just found ourselves in falling in love. And it is that blissful feeling. When we start losing ourselves again in love because we let fear set in, then that whole fabric disintegrates. When we get into a place and a headspace where instead of looking out for the interest of the other person, which is what love and falling in love was all about, we start looking to meet our needs. Love and its essence is in meeting the needs of the other person, not looking for your needs to be met. When I'm looking to meet your needs and you make it your priority to meet my needs, then we're good. But when each person is looking to meet their needs, selfishness kicks in, communication goes out the door, conflict sets in. They start comparing notes and they become a threat to each other. So that's it. First human needs: safety, security, comfort. We want to be certain that we will be safe, secure, and comfortable. Then when we become certain, boredom sets in. We need variety. We go looking for adventure. We want to try different things. When we're trying these different things, what is God actually getting us to do? God is getting us to discover the machine. What can this machine do? God is calling you to come closer to this deity. Come close to me and I will show you that with faith the size of a mustard seed you can do as I did and much more, because you and I are one. We are the I am. You are my spirit, which means you are my ears, you are my eyes, you are my speech, and you are my vehicle, you are my hand. And that's the message God is trying to tell us every single day. But we eventually get to a place where we serve the flesh instead of serving God. We start taking care of the flesh when the flesh was supposed to be executing the orders and doing the work that we were meant to do. You wake up every morning, you go, you polish your car, then you leave it in the garage and you take a taxi to work. Congrats. That's what we have finally achieved. We pay so much attention to the car and we forget what the car is actually meant. So the car becomes the end, whereas the car was supposed to be the beginning of that journey.
Wonderful,
Journey.
BK. So just before, I think it's important, when I talked about this hierarchy of needs, I was looking at it from a very, very different perspective. I thought you were going to be talking about food, drinking, and a few other things. But this is
those, those, those ones, those ones. That is the thing. That's why I say that they evolve every time now. you know, everything now they evolve. But these ones are like the core. You know,
right.
and okay,
Go ahead,
and
Go ahead.
yeah, and the thing is, I remember when you talked before you hand over to BK, you said that most of our problems, and we were at that point, you were still talking about, we knowing ourselves. And you said most of our problems, that's where they lie. That's where they come from, you know. And I know we are talking about relationship, but I think it's not just relationship. It is, I would say, practically all our problems. You know, all our problems they come. If you don't know yourself, you don't. You know, and part of knowing yourself is like I talk about being present. And the issue is that, if I take even just a question of health, you know, I know there's so much about the, eat, diet and exercise, diet and exercise. And one of the things which I talk with people of recent is that most of the issues which we have is not even the question of what we eat. It's a question of how we eat. And the thing is, when you see food, if you look at food and you give attention to it, you feel saliva in your mouth. You look at soya, you feel it in your mouth. The fact that you feel the saliva in your mouth, it is already the digestion getting ready. But for that to happen, you need to give attention to it. You need to give attention to it. And most of our problems that we have now, when we talk about it not being present, it's about attention. I talk about I now we have people who will sit and eat food, and if you ask how was the salt in that food, they don't even know. They don't know. And if you don't know about the salt, how do you think that digestion is going to take place? When you eat food and you have to taste, you feel the texture of the food, you feel the taste of the food, you feel the flavor of the food, you enjoy the food. And that enjoyment is what facilitates the digestion. But the most of we just eat now, and we just eat, and we are eating and watching TV and watching things that are frightful, and rather than the digestion taking place, it is the fear hormones that are inside causing destruction. And that is part of the issues. When you say all our problems, some of our problems, it is all of our problems. But I was talking I remember I was talking just last week with somebody in Cameroon, and they're talking about stress. And I said, go for a walk. And he said, every time you talk about go for a walk, go for a walk. Sometimes I go for a walk, come back, I even feel more tired. I said, that is the issue. Because you don't go for a walk. We have people who are going for a walk and the car can knock them because their mind is somewhere else. But if you go for a walk and you see the tree that you've not seen, and you see the flower in that tree, and you even go and touch that tree, and you feel the smell of things around the street that you've not smelled before, that is, you cannot do that except you are present on the road that you are walking. When we talk about it, is like more of said, Lambert, okay, you come, you sit down, we are doing a business deal. You finish the deal. And we said, deal done, yes. Everything agreed, yes. Okay, you sign. And you said, okay, let's shake hand on this deal. You said, shake hand. I said, no, Lambert, the deal is done now. You said, no, don't shake hand. I said, no, the deal is done. Tell me, will you feel that the deal is done?
No. How would I?
That's the issue. That's the issue. When you shake hand, even in this pre-corona time, when you shake hand, you feel that something is done. And if you are shaking hand and I'm shaking hand like this, it is not. You need to, when somebody is present, and that, even we talk about relationship, Dike mentioned about connection there. Even with most of our relationship, the issue is that we are not even present. Just like the food with the food that we eat and have issues with our health, even in our relationship, we are not present. We say, oh yeah, this is it's not being present. Being present, you are sitting at home and you are watching football and she's talking and you are making this. You are not present. I'm telling you, even if you have problems with her and you are angry and you sit down and you are present and you just watch at her for maximum 5 minutes, I'm telling you, you will realize that you love her more than you thought. And that is our biggest issue. When you are present, when you see people who, sometimes, this person, you see somebody who go and have sex with a mad woman. It's why? Because the person, sometimes we say lost. Lost is just you are so lost in the present of that person. And the people get lost for mad people. But they cannot get lost with the woman with whom they are in the house, because you already have a list of things that when you see her, is those things that come to your mind. And if you remove those things and you look at the person in front of you, you get the connection. And when you get that connection, you forget everything. You will see somebody who is sitting there with a woman in their house, and he is struggling with a woman, and he doesn't even feel the pain of the woman, but he will take his phone, watch pornography, and get lost with the person on the phone. You fall in love with the person on the phone more than the human being in front of you. That's the problem with us now. Because the person in front of you, you have different expectations. You forget you don't see the woman in front of you. Because you have a list of expectations. You have a list of what you've thought your need. And your need is just to be present, and you will feel the need. Our problems, they come because we are not present. If you are present, when we talk about artists, when they said, oh, you look at this art and they said that this one, it costs $300,000. It's why? Because you look at it and you give detail to every stroke of the pen. And that is except you look at it with your attention, except you look at it being present, you can never admire the work of art. And except you look at your wife or your woman sitting and you look at her and you are present, you can never see the beauty. And I'm telling you, no matter the woman, whether it's the one that you thought is ugly, if you give that attention to her, you will see how beautiful she is.
This is so deep, isn't it? We're getting into the philosophy of presence.
That is it.
Very important. And because I'm a Catholic, I know we don't talk about religion here. We don't get into those things. There's something about presence, isn't it? The real presence.
Yes.
Isn't it? There's something there that think about it in terms of the gospel story of the woman who was hemorrhaging for 12 years. It took a touch, isn't it? It was a touch.
Of course, absolutely. Absolutely. And you touch, you have to feel. But our issue is that sometimes we touch now and our mind is somewhere else. You don't feel. You don't.
We are absent.
We are absent. We are
So
absent.
our identity crisis is locked up in our absence. Precisely
In our
because
absence. We don't even know. It's like BK said earlier. We don't even know ourselves. We can't even feel ourselves. We can't feel our own presence. And because we are so distracted with the noise outside, with the expectations outside. We said, oh, this and this and that. She doesn't fulfill. I say, sometimes people said, oh, this, like BK was saying, oh, you don't get angry with people. I said, why do I get angry with? Why do we get angry with people? Because they do not fulfill our expectations. We have made ourselves so important, And sometimes for me, I just said, okay, all right, BK didn't do this for me, but who am I that he's supposed to live for my expectation? Who am I? Whom do I, sometimes you said, who do you think you are? I ask myself, who do I think I am? That somebody else must live up to my expectation. Is a person my daughter? Even my daughter, I have to sometimes try to see how I negotiate with her. And that is our biggest issue. We don't really stop and look and feel and know who we are. And I think that for me, I feel that is the core of our, like you said, of our problems. Be it our health problem, whether it is the stress that Bika talk about, whether it is the health, whether it is the relationship, if you don't know yourself, if you cannot even feel your own presence, how do you feel? How do you want to feel somebody else's presence if you don't even feel your own self? You need to feel yourself first.
So that again, that's so insightful, and I wanted to tie that in with what BK gave us in terms of those six
Yeah,
needs, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Because on every level, it has to do with presence.
It has to
It
be
is, I mean, survivor, security, comfort, even just at that
connection,
primary level,
growth. You know,
all through, it
growth
has to
to
be about
give.
presence.
And when you give, you have. It's like I said, if even if I give you the deal and I'm not there, you are, you know,
You still
and
need.
that is, and even like with the giving that BK talked about, that is the issue with many of us, because sometimes I will give you $100. Every time you come, I give you $100, and I'm telling you, a human being is so sensitive that if I give you $100 and I am just giving it because I have $1,000, tomorrow if you take that $100 and you are going and BK give you $10, when BK give you the $10, you hold the $10, you will talk about the $10 that BK gave you more than the $100 that I gave you. Because I just gave, oh, he's coming. And that is the issue with some of our rich people back home. They get angry that I give, you come every time I give. No, because the person know you just, when I'm coming, you are already thinking I'm coming for money. You just give the money. And the person just take it to that. The person just know. You don't even know how much you gave me. But another person will just give 1,000 and then they will mean everything for the person. And then you will say the person is ungrateful and said family don't value the things that you give because family know that you just throw them away.
So BK,
Yes,
that's deep.
it is very deep.
And I'm
And
and I'm looking at it and thinking that is a great summary of all the needs that we have. And I mean, even before we get to that, I do these needs, the six things that you point out, do they happen sequentially, or they come in any order and in every order? So what do I mean? Do I need to move from certainty to uncertainty to recognition to connection, yeah, making a difference? Or we have these all at different times and different things? And I mean, Doc just said here beautifully that all our problems come because we are not present. We're not present. We don't even know ourselves, isn't it? And because we don't know ourselves, we don't even recognize
No,
the
that came
fact
from
that,
BK. I expanded on it. He
right,
said it long ago. Yes.
right. So I'm like, nobody has certainty that this man that they are going to get married to is going to provide them with the safety, security, and comfort. You go in because you are hoping, isn't it? There may be for some people that security is already there, but they are hoping that there's no guarantee that it stays throughout. But I think what Doc is saying is, even in that situation, being present will be able to give you pointers to see beyond just this particular safety at this time or this insecurity at this time, that there's more to it than that. So how do you take what Doc has said, that presence, and factor that into the different needs that we have, making sure that we're able to be present in our relationships, since we're talking about this?
yeah, so this is where I want us to go back to who we are ultimately. We're energy. So we are a dynamic continuum. We are flow. It is not something that we can break and box. We use all these different labels because it helps us to the best of our abilities to understand who we are and how we roll and how we operate. The way I prefer to look at it is as such. Life is going to throw different curveballs at us at different points in time based on the paths that we choose, our journey. And the purpose is, there's only one purpose: to bring out from within us the good in us, our strengths, and to bring out from within us our weaknesses. So when you get married, for instance, what's really happening? You have two people who have come together, and the purpose is to really begin a journey of growth. You're not getting married because you're ready for marriage. I don't think there's anybody on the planet who's ready for marriage. We start that journey the day we get married. Pretty much, I say this all the time. For those of us who've had certificates, who were privy to education, and there's formal, there's informal education. It doesn't matter the kind of education that you go through, whether formal or informal. You would realize that at the end of the process, you get a certificate, and that certificate simply says somebody can trust you. Somebody can trust that you can follow instructions in a particular area, so they'll give you an opportunity to go show them what you've really got. Otherwise, it says absolutely nothing. For anyone who's ever done an interview, you put out an interview, a job interview, and you get 6,000 candidates. Then you start talking to them. You look at who they are on paper, and they're not necessarily lying. They've done all those things, they've had all those certificates, but then you talk to them and you realize that all that is left is what was written on paper. Everything else has been washed off. So when we look at it from a point of view of energy, you realize that it doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter the sequence. All that matters is what it is that appeals to your fancy at any point in time. So you may start and you're more interested in your hobbies, you're more interested in variety because you have been excited. Something has triggered you. You've seen something that you love, that you fell in love with, and it happened to have been this person who exhibited all the values that you wanted. So you're falling in love with someone you can't even take care of. You're falling in love with somebody you can't give anything to. You're falling in love with someone who will not even stop to look at you twice. The question is, how do you deal with that? And how do they motivate you to grow? Do they then inspire you to go back to that whole certainty, the certainty that the next time you fall in love with someone, you will make sure that you have something that you can at least put to the table, bring to the table, that you will be in a place where you can meet their needs, emotional, psychological, and physical. So you notice when we catalog it as we did, it is for the purposes of this conversation. In the real world, it never happens that way. Yes, we could prioritize, so we can have different needs at different times, and we can prioritize different needs at different times. But then again, we've got all these checks and balances. When you start sinking to the physical needs and you're paying too much attention to the flesh, you pay a price. When we prioritize the wrong things, eventually we get into this place of distress, lack of ease, dis-ease, as Edwin said, disease. Because we start building anxieties in places where we don't need these anxieties. How many times have we been stressed up about something? And that thing that we were so stressed out about to the point where we actually broke a sweat, we leave it alone, we don't touch it, and it takes care of itself. But all that anxiety was real. All that adrenaline and cortisol and all those hormones and the cascade of hormones that were released at that time, they were all real. And what they did to your body, some of them could have been irreversible. That was all real, trapped energy within us. You see, life is trying to live through us. When we get in the way by introducing fear, we get into that state of disease. We are called upon and invited to go with the flow. Any situation that we encounter, we want to understand, what is this trying to teach me? What can I learn from this? Where's the teacher? What's the lesson? How do I get it? How do I come out of this better than I went in? So those are the only questions. Those are the only things we really want to preoccupy ourselves with. And then what are the urgent needs that we've been neglecting because we were chasing something else that was not particularly important? Growth and contribution. You can't be trying to contribute if you don't have any skills. What are you contributing? So this is where sometimes we set ourselves up for failure. You go and you apply for a job because you know someone who can get you in there. And then you jump in there and you're suffering from imposter syndrome. These are the different ways we kill ourselves. Unless, of course, you can go in there and then live up to expectation. Otherwise, you would have put yourself on a path which will be so perilous. It will bring so much stress. You could lose yourself and eventually lose your soul because it's just untenable. You can't cope in that environment. If it's not conducive enough, then you couldn't cope. You're cutting your coat not according to your size. You're cutting your coat according to the size, as Edwin said, that you want people to see. I think you mentioned that as well, Lambert. According to the size you would want to be seen to be. But then people look at the coat, they see a coat, they're looking for you, they can't find you when they need you to show up. Back to what Edwin said. So it's dynamic. There's no hard and fast rule. They are all the exact same thing. We're doing all at the same time every time. But we may choose to prioritize one at any one point in time because there is something. We call them key decisions. We go through life and we go through experiences, and these experiences all leave a mark in us. And so when we go through something, it could be traumatic, we could then come up with what you call a key decision. And this key decision simply is a statement, conscious or subconscious, that we say to us, that we tell ourselves. And it goes something like this: this thing will never happen to me again. And then that becomes our focus. So you would notice that we then start focusing on different needs at different times, depending on our set of circumstances and what it is we're going through in life. Some people never have to worry about the whole survival need, just to put it in context. Why? Because they come from very affluent backgrounds with inheritances. So that first need, safe, secure, and comfortable, it will never really be an issue. Although there is the whole thing about abuse as well, because if you don't value the things that you have, you tend to use and abuse and misuse them. You may start meeting your needs in negative ways, and then it breaks that cycle again, lands you in trouble. And then you have to learn some of the things that you had unlearned, or unlearn some of the things that you had learned that were not serving you. Because ultimately, a relationship, any relationship, it doesn't matter whether it's with a friend, a sibling, a stranger, your boss at work, a colleague, or your spouse. Every relationship is designed to shape you into the tool that you were meant to be. And that's why I always say, or we will always say, choose your spouse carefully. Choose your tribe even more carefully, because ultimately your tribe will shape you. So in a sentence, to come back to the question that you asked, is there a particular order to follow? No. Our path in life and the things that we prioritize will determine the things that we will focus on, and that will set a stage and set the ball rolling for everything else to happen. But ultimately, we want to get to that place where we realize, where we transcend the physical needs and the survival needs, so we can operate at a higher level, be in touch with the higher self, that part of you and I that is one, that is connected with universal intelligence or divine intelligence, Mother Nature, which we call God, or Allah, or Krishna, or whatever it is you want to call it.
So part of the thing we're supposed to be addressing today is the fact that relationships break down because of unmet needs. But listening to Edwin, it seems as if these needs are what we call expectations. And I know while we're at the back, we talked about one particular need, which for many people is call it for relationships, married people, is sex, isn't it? We find that our society has become so hyper sexualized that it is so central to relationships, without which you hear men talk about the fact that women have used sex as a weapon. And so, in order to, if you want to have sex, you have to give me something, isn't it? And even in our world, sex becomes one of the great pillars for divorce, isn't it? If you are not having sex, therefore you should have a divorce. Why would you not? So it's as if the most important need in this relationship is sex. And so why am I not having it? But then you find that in that dynamic, it is easier for the man than the woman because we men will take care of ourselves. It's easy for us to get satisfied much more than the women. And so the sex dynamic becomes a problem that in most of these, well, in many relationships, the unmet sexual need becomes the reason for the breakdown in the relationship because the man thinks that the woman is supposed to be satisfying him anytime and every time he wants. And because you don't find the woman demanding sex or asking for this, it becomes a problem for some people. How do we how do we deal with relationships that are breaking down because of this particular unmet need? For others, it could be an unmet need of money, isn't it? Finances. Finances could be the reason why the relationship is breaking down. Maybe because that safety, security, and comfort has not been. And so, in general, while I use those two examples, how do we solve the problem of relationships that are breaking down because of unmet needs?
Well, I think for me the thing is that the question of relationship breakdown. It is more like the example that BK gave before about you know thinking that you need a car. Meanwhile, what you need is transportation. And I think that for a long time, there have been people where sometimes you see somebody where the relationship break down, and he said, my girlfriend just left me or my wife left me,
Sorry for
and
interrupting. I wanted to show you BK clapping because BK was actually clapping when you said.
you know,
So again, very important point.
yeah,
Somebody wants a car, thinks that they need a car when actually what they need is transportation. That's
Transportation.
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I think that that is the most relationship we are in that situation. He you ask the man, he tells you, oh, I'm not getting the sex. Are you sure the issue is actually the sex? Because we do have a lot of men where the relationship break up, and you ask him why, what happened, and he said, no, I don't know. She just left. She just left. For me, when she just left and you don't know why she left, then it means that the problem is you. You know, because if you love her, if you were present, you will know why she left. You know, and when you said, "Oh, she's not giving the sex," why is she not giving the sex? The question is why. Because she doesn't just wake up and say, no, I don't want to give you the sex. So for me, the first thing is more of, you think that the issue is not that she didn't give the sex. No, the issue is that you don't even know why. You don't even know what is wrong with her. And if you don't know why she is not giving the sex, no, she is using it like a weapon. And if you don't know why, then if you know why, then you will not be talking about the sex as the issue. Vic, I don't know what you want to add about
Yes, so Edwin, I don't think I could articulate it any better. You see, because when you have two people in a relationship, if you ask me, sex is the outcome of a union. Sex is the outcome of an engagement. You don't get into this. You don't come back from work planning, okay, I'll have sex today.
it.
Usually it starts with, sweetheart, how was your day? Oh,
Yes,
my day was good. Oh
yes,
my, no, I had a hard day. I had a tough day.
mm-hmm,
Come
yes,
here. Let me give you a hug. What would these people do without you?
yep,
And then you see she's in dire straits or she's mad at you and she fires at you and she says all these things that are very insensitive. And by the way, what we need to understand as well is that women are not like men and men are not like women. I don't want to talk about men and women. I want to talk about male energy and female energy, because some men carry 90% female energy and just 10, they're just 10% male. And some women have 90% male energy and they're just 10% female. We usually say, oh, she's the one wearing the trousers. She's the man, really, in the relationship. So when a woman is bickering at you, all she's really saying is, you're
Okay,
not
hang
showing
on,
attention.
hang on. I wanted just to, sorry to interrupt you, but isn't that a problem
Isn't
when you
what a
say that
problem?
the woman is carrying 90% in her of the man? So in a relationship where you have that reversal of roles and it's not properly understood, it's a
Yes. So
recipe.
is it a recipe for disaster? Not
Yeah.
necessarily. Not
Okay.
necessarily, because if two people are compatible, you would normally realize that in a situation like that, the alpha female gets married to the
The
non-alpha male.
the lambda male.
And that's why they said somebody, and that's why they said that she's wearing the trousers, because of
Exactly.
course somebody give in certain aspects,
Yes.
you know.
And to add to what Edwin said, that was the attraction between the two of them. The man admired the masculinity in the woman because he did not have it. And the woman admired the femininity in the man because she has not really gotten it. Like I said, it's when these things, these differences become threats and communication goes out the window. Because what is communication? Communication means you say something,
Yeah.
I listen to understand. I'm not listening to speak. I'm listening to understand. And then I check understanding. That way there is no misunderstanding. So I can't turn around and say, oh, but then you said this the other day, and then you hear, no, but this is what I meant. So you don't mean to say, you say what you mean. And for as long as that is happening, and again, like I said, you start this conversation, and we are not trivializing anything. See, because we men, if the house is not on fire, then it is not important, generally. Whereas for the woman, she may just want to talk about anything, everything, and nothing. That's female energy. Think about it. When you have a female boss who's chairing a meeting, when she walks in, the first thing she's doing is she's asking people how their weekends was, small talk and things about her that have nothing to do with the meeting and the agenda and all whatnot. Warm up, so to speak, to get everybody in the mood. Whereas male energy is about, okay, we came here for this purpose, let's dive in. So you would realize that that female energy is a lot more effective when it comes to community, bringing people together, building, exchanging energies and building synergies at the workplace. What male energy fails to realize, especially the alpha males, we all know, where do the best and the toughest and where do the best decisions and all the recruitment, where does it really take place? In most organizations, on the golf course, right?
Mhm.
Or when they are socializing. That's when the real decisions take place, not in meetings. So what does that tell you? There is something about female energy which is intuitive. That intuition, they are more designed to connect and then to feel. And like Edwin said, and he articulated it very, very beautifully. When you connect, obviously, when you're present, you will connect. And when you connect, you will feel. When you start feeling, you will know when to go to bed. It will not be a question of, can I have this thing today? And then a negotiation starts. No, I'm tired. So it will
Or the
never
negotiations,
happen
that
like
that
that.
is that is the only thing that comes to your mind every time, every
Exactly.
time. I asked you this yesterday. What have you done? you know.
So you exactly. So you realize
So the
sex
problem
will
is
be,
not the, yeah.
yeah. So sex will be something that will happen. It's not something that will be negotiated. because the communication is right and everything is where it should be. Of course, it becomes a problem as well when sex is used as a when sex is used as a vehicle for gratification. So I'm using you for sex, you're using me for sex, and we understand that okay, from time to time we will want this sense of ecstasy, this sense of gratification. So I'm not giving it to you because I feel it. I'm giving it to you because hey, someday I will need it, and so I'll come for it. And don't forget again, where does sex fall? The need for what? Love and connection.
Connection.
When it gets used and abused, when it gets weaponized, it eventually kills the relationship. When two people are using each other, are abusing each other, it doesn't matter that she's giving it all the time and you're giving it all the time. Your reason for having it eventually will come to light. And so, what I always say is any form of engagement, any form of interaction will tell us where we are in our relationship. And by virtue of that, it will clearly tell me how I am doing in the relationship. Am I meeting you at your point of need? Am I meeting you at your point of want? Is the relationship growing? Or am I being selfish and using you to meet, well, my wants, to satisfy and to gratify myself? So to go back to the original question which you asked, this whole marriage or the whole sex thing, do you want to chime in?
Maybe, Doc.
Well, I think you just round it up, which is like like what I said, but in you know, if in most cases, like I said, where we said, oh, the problem have broken up because of sex. Actually, like you said, it is a couple of things. Sex is not usually like somebody says, oh, go to work, come back and said, oh, I want to have this, I want to do this. No, if you are present, if you are if it comes like a flow. Sometimes sometimes even when you were coming in and thinking I'm going to do it, it comes like a flow. You get so engaged and you get so romantic that you even forget about the intercourse itself. And there are people who are in love who will not even who who just enjoy the presence of each other for a couple of days. But for somebody for whom it is just more of, oh yeah, you know what, it is become something. You come back and said, oh, I want knack. You said, is it something in the road or what? No. And so for me, when somebody said the relationship are broken down because of sex, I just look at it and said, actually, you don't know why the relationship are broken up, and it means that you know, did you really love her? Were you really in love with her? know.
Exactly.
So because if you were in love with her, you will not be talking about the sex being the reason why the relationship are broken up.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, I think there are, we tend to betray ourselves without realizing. Because what that person equally would have said is they would have highlighted what their focus was in the relationship. So to them, it was really all about sex. And if they were not getting it, then they were not present. And it pushed them even further and further away. They were insensitive to the needs of the other person because they could not show up if they were not getting what they wanted. Because for someone like that, if for them sex is everything and you don't give them sex, you don't respect them.
DK, and the truth is that for those people who will say sex is everything, but even when you give the sex, they say that, you know, she's just the sex is boring. You know,
Exactly.
it becomes the sex is boring. It just becomes she's not romantic. She just lie there. Of course, because she just know that you are just looking for the hole. So you know And that is the thing. For me, it is more of, do you really know what is going wrong? What is wrong? And if you don't know what is wrong, then the problem is you. The problem is not her.
Absolutely.
And it's the same with her anyway. So
Which is
I'm
why
saying
I say,
I'm saying the problem is her, as if it is just men that have such problems. No.
Yeah, I mean, I guess people understand that again, we are men, isn't it? So
Yeah,
but
of
this
course.
is not meant to be just for the
Yeah,
pro. It could be both ways. It could be either.
yeah.
That's not a problem.
absolutely.
So BK, you realize we've been on for 1 hour 45 minutes,
It's
and
almost 2 hours. So
yeah. So let us not exhaust. I don't want Dr. Edwin not to want to come back because the
nah, it's all
wisdom he has shared
right.
yesterday is great. But so let's take the last things and just lay out again, just summarize for us what we went about today. Because again, I think for me the two things that we have really talked about today are the identity crisis that we have. That is what is that's what accounts for the problems that we are having in our relationships in the world. We don't know who we are. We need to sit back, strip ourselves of all these things, that the accolades and all the people we have surrounded ourselves with, all of that,
And just be
to
human.
get down to discover who we are. Is the famous question about when you peel the onion,
Yeah,
all of it, what are you left with? You are left with tears in your eyes, isn't it? That is where you want to go. You want to
Yeah.
get to
absolutely.
that point where you have peeled the onions
Yeah,
and you are looking and you don't believe that this is who you truly are. Because of that, I didn't see Karen. Yes, but Karen, I'm sorry, I forgot about you, but thank you. Um, and then the second thing we also highlighted was the fact that presence, isn't it?
yeah,
Once you discover that and you are present, then you are able to run through the things that BK outlined for us in terms of
yeah,
the six needs:
yes,
the
yeah,
certainty, the
yeah,
uncertainty, the recognition, love and connection, the urge to make a difference, and that contribution that you come through. And I think that when you are able to pull yourself apart, to be present to yourself, you'll be able to identify your needs and the needs of your spouse. And you are
absolutely,
able to work that to see
absolutely.
where are these areas where we are not complementing each other and we need to work towards that.
Yeah,
Relationships become better.
of course.
Over to you, the experts.
Well, you've just summarized for me. I think yeah, I think you've
Exactly.
summarized it all. Because like you say, once you know who you are and and then you start realizing, actually I think that I'm looking for this, and actually it is this need that I want to fulfill. Then you start realizing that, oh yeah, it's not jealousy, it is recognition. you know it is not this, it's not hunger, it is growth. And if you recognize your own, then you can also recognize the other person's own. Because one, if you get those one, the names as BK name them. Sometimes it is just, it's not about person being bored. Or you say this person is boring, you complain that somebody is boring. No, the person just want variety. And the person is not boring. The person just want variety. You keep on being the same person. The person already know. The person is certain that when you come back, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. This is you. Then of course you know yourself. You know the person very very easily.
Absolutely. And
And the relationship becomes stronger.
I think that is beautifully put. You see, because again, in that case, you then know how to compliment, you then understand where your friends come in.
Yeah.
Because that variety means you can then go spend time with your own friends, and he or she can go spend time with their own friends, and you meet your needs for variety without compromising the relationship. And again, conflicting needs. Somebody at a particular point in time could want love and connection, and the other person is looking for significance. And so, so you need to understand that the person you're dealing with prioritizes significance a whole lot. So, how do you meet their need for significance while asking for your need for love and connection to be met? What conversation are you going to be having? Don't come and start telling you're looking for love and connection, and your first conversation is, oh, you promised to do this to me and you did not do it. You promised to take me here last week or last year, and it never really happened. And this is someone who wants and is looking for validation. So you
Kill.
just use them to mop the floor with, and you're expecting that they're going to give you love and connection.
You're
Good
going to
luck.
welcome back. It's great, man.
So on that note, I would say I think Lambert, you summarized beautifully.
No,
I
you
don't think
summarized
any
it.
of us could have said anything better.
I really think that this is one for the books. This has been, I mean, I'm talking about personally, I really learned a lot this evening. It's not as if I don't learn. I learn every day, every show that we have. But I really think that this has been, and it is for those who come back to watch, I mean, and those who are on set with us, it is for each of us to look at ourselves, whether you're in relationship or you are, I mean, we are all in relationship in one way or the other, whether it's with
Yeah,
the family, even relating to yourself, isn't it? The
Of
key
course.
is to discover who we are.
who you are.
Yes, who am I? And to be able to now look at this and peel back and say, hey, what are these needs? How can I be present to myself? How can I be present to the other? How can I be present in the relationship in a way that doesn't come across as, oh, it is I versus the other person, isn't it? Because as BK said, when we want to come together,
Yeah.
the mirror, the differences,
Yeah.
you
Get
know,
in the
because
way.
again,
They become threats.
yeah, the danger is when you don't see the other person. You are looking for your other self in the other person when you're supposed to be looking for something else. But again, I want to thank you all. Thank you very much for this. It's been great. A few people came in and out. Our core group was not on today, but as usual, we know that they will come and watch and leave comments. BK will be there to answer the comments when they drop them. But any last words, Doc? Any last words, BK? I know you all were
No,
running, but
I think I'm just honored to be, to be with you guys. So thank you very much. That is, for me, it's really, thank you very much. Thank you. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
and of
Brilliant.
course, the coach.
Yes, so I'm happy that we did not scare Edu enough, and that he's looking forward to showing up again
I
next
You don't conclude. You are happy you didn't scare me up. I'm waiting to go offset before I say how scared I was.
week. Lambert, like we say all the time, we're building a community, and we are in no hurry as we do that. We hope that this grows by leaps and bounds. And like they always say, if you're going to start something, start it small. We started the two of us. Now we've got Edwin. The next person who joins this locomotive knows exactly where it is going. It is by far and a lot better than having 100 people in a room with 100 different ideas going in 100 different directions. It just becomes a recipe for disaster. And I'd like to close by saying, when it comes to relationships and relating, life is about relationships and relating. We're either relating with ourselves, relating with loved ones, or relating in our places of work. And even in our places of work, you will notice we relate with processes and procedures, and these are organized in such a way that they deliver a particular outcome. So it's always relating, regardless of where we go. And when we understand who we are and we can relate with ourselves and we can be at peace at all times, it puts us in a place that allows us to relate with anything and with anybody. So being true to the self. You're not somebody else when you're all by yourself, somebody else when you're with family, somebody else when you're with friends, and somebody else at the workplace. If someone were to visit you in all these different places and were to ask, who is this person? Would the story be the same when you're alone, when you are with family, when you're with friends, and when you're at work? If that is true for anyone, then they know they are really growing. Like they say, there are three spheres of life, only three. There is the self, there are relationships, and then there is the career. There's nothing in your life that will not fall in one of these spheres. And so, if we take care of these three spheres, our relationships will be rock solid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very appreciative to my two co-hosts. They are all coming from across the pond. They are in the UK. It is, I think, 1 a.m. We're getting to 1 a.m. now. I really want to appreciate you for the sacrifice you make, especially today's Dr. Edwin's first opportunity. I really want to thank you. And I want to close on something BK said here. Choose your spouse carefully, but choose your tribe even more carefully. And I think that I have chosen this particular tribe more carefully. And we all on set are also choosing you to become a part of our tribe. And we are asking that you to choose us carefully and more. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Until next Monday.